Hi friends, my name is Niman Bhatt and I welcome you to this video tutorial which is about GNS3, which is a graphical network simulator used for network designs. So this is the part 7th of the video tutorial, and in the previous video tutorials we have already talked about many topics such as IP addressing, host names, passwords, and in the previous video tutorial, that is the part 6 of GNS3, we have talked about how we can configure NTP and CTP on this on the iOS Cisco devices. Now in this video tutorial we are going to talk about mapping host names to the IP addresses, that is giving the names to the IP addresses so that we can find them with the help of the names, and that we do in in two ways, that is in the static way and with the help of a domain name server. When the DNS, that is domain name system, is present, at that time we don't need to shift to static mapping of host names to IP addresses. Now let me show you how we can map host names to the IP addresses in this video tutorial. First of all, I've already designed the network here, as you can see on the screen. Now I'll first start all devices. Okay, the devices are run. Okay, now I have to start the configuration of the devices. It will take a moment before it loads its initial configuration. Okay, it's done. As you can see here in the network, R1 is connected to R2, that is the router 1 is connected to router 2, and these routers are connected to two switches, SW1 and SW2, and the other hosts as well. So let's start the configuration. Before we can do this host name mapping, we have to configure IP addressing of the network. So we'll start with the IP addressing, which I have already taught you in the previous tutorials, and I'll be a little fast with that here. So I hope you will understand that because we have already learned that. I'll move into the router 1. Let's see with what ports it's connected. It's connected with through serial port 0/0 and Ethernet port 0/0. Okay, let's open the configuration. Let's start with the IP addressing. For that I have to move into the configuration mode. Now I'll assign IP addresses for the first fast Ethernet port first. I'll go into the interface fast Ethernet. Now I'll assign an IP address to the Ethernet port. And subnetting, that is subnet mask. I have to keep the link up with no shutdown command. Press enter. Now I'll go back and save the configuration. A moment. Yes, I'll go back and save the configuration. Okay, now I have to assign IP address to the serial port. For that I have to write the command interface serial 0/0 port, and now I have to do the IP addressing of this port too. This we have already learned. It will just help you a bit to recapitulate a bit. Now I'll assign it an IP address. Say it is 2.1. Okay, and now subnet mask. Press enter, and now we have to put this link up. Yeah, a moment before it. Okay, now we'll save the configuration. this much is done. We are done with this router. Now we have to configure the other router. We have to check the ports connected to it. That is R2 port, that is fast Ethernet port 0/0, and serial port 0/0. We have to configure these two ports. Okay, we'll go into the configuration mode. Then we'll go into the interface fast Ethernet 0/0. Now I'll assign IP address to it. I'm assigning third network for this, and then I'll assign a subnet. And now I have to write the command no shutdown, and then we'll save this configuration. Okay, now I'll assign the IP address to the serial port. For that, we'll go into the interface of serial port. IP address 192.168.2.2. Okay, subnet. Press enter, no shutdown, enter, and then save the configuration. The port is up. So what we did is we configured these four ports, that is this port, this port, this port, and this port. Now we'll learn the mapping of host names to the IP addresses. By mapping we mean that we'll learn to map host names to the IP addresses to provide the name resolution. We're providing the names, and this is first we'll show it where the DNS server, that is DNS, that is domain name system, is not present. So let us start with this mapping. We'll go into the router 1. Okay, already have configuration here. We'll go into the router 1. So let's start with the mapping of the IP addresses. Let's start with giving the names to the IP addresses. First, we'll see how we can map that, how the mappings are defined by using the command. For that, we have to use the command in the configuration mode. We'll go into the configuration mode first. That is, we'll write the command config-t, which we already know. And now I have to write a command where we can define this mapping to the IP address. For that, I have to write the command IP host, and then the name which I want to assign to the IP address, that is a name, that is the host name which I want to map to the IP address. Say the name I want to choose here is Utopian, and then the IP address, for example, it is 192.168.1.1. Okay, now present. So what I have done is that I have assigned a name, host name, Utopian, to the address 192.168.1.1. The command for mapping is shown here, and I'm highlighting it again for that, so that you can remember it. Okay, after this, now what we have to do is we'll try to show, we'll try to display if the host name, if the mapping is done or not. For that, we'll go back to the privilege mode, and now we'll have to write a command show hosts and press enter. Here you go. After I press the command, I wrote the command show hosts. Here is the command. I'm highlighting it again. You have to write it in the privilege mode, and then as you can see, the host name has been mapped to the IP address 192.168.1.1. one. That is, a name has been given to the IP address, which we can find with the help of the name now. That is, we can find this IP address, we can ping this, we can share data with this, even with the help of the name. Now, I'll show you how we can verify that the host names are being resolved. That is, we can send this message, or the connection is built to this port even with the name. So what we'll do is ping we'll try to ping this IP address. We'll try to send a message to this IP address. For that, we have to write a very basic command, which is ping. Once again, I'm repeating, a ping is basically used to check if the connection is made or not, if the connection is possible or not. It basically sends packets of data. So the utopian is the name of the IP address which we have assigned. We'll try to ping the name, not the address, because the address will be pinged, obviously, because the connection is built already. But now here we're going to check if we can ping it with the help of the name, because we have assigned a name to the IP address. So we'll ping utopian. Please check the command again. It is ping utopian. I'm trying to ping utopian again, okay, so that I'll verify that host names are being resolved. After that, I'll press enter. Okay, here you can see type escape sequence to abort. Now, sending, the success rate is 100%. That is, the data is being sent, the ping was possible, the packets of data are being sent to it, the connection is built. So this utopian name is verified for the IP address 192.168.1.1. But this is the static mode of assigning host names to addresses. And this is done where basically DNS, that is domain name system, is not present. Now in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you that also, that how we can resolve host names with the help of domain name system. For that, we have to understand what DNS is. DNS is basically the system which is used to resolve host names. So we have to start the DNS configuration. We'll learn to configure DNS here, so that we can give names which are to the not it is not used for static only, it is used for dynamic also. So we will if DNS is disabled, we will first have to enable it. Okay, uh, going back to the commands with which we can configure this DNS, what we'll try is we'll see if the DNS is disabled, how we can enable it first before we can configure it. For that, we have to write a command which has to be wrote in the global configuration mode. For that, we'll write the command config t so that we can move into the configuration mode. And now we'll write the command IP domain dash lookup. This is the command used to first enable this DNS server if it's not enabled. So we have to write the command IP domain lookup. The command is highlighted. You can write it down, or you can remember it, whatever the way you want it to be. So after this, we'll press enter. That means we have enabled DNS system, that is the domain name system is enabled. After this, what we'll try to do is we'll specify the IP address of the DNS server using a command. That is, we'll try to specify an IP address as the server for what we for the server, for the name, for the address for which we have to assign a name. So we have to write a command IP name server and the address. Say the address is 192.168.2.2. okay, so what is the command? It is IP name server and the IP address of the host or the network which we want to, of the address which we want to choose for the server. That is IP name server and the address Okay, now what we can do is we can assign a name to it. For that, we have to write a command ip domain dash server, sorry, name, and then we choose a name for this IP address, that is the name which we want to map. For example, the name here again is utopian, and then I'll press enter. So what have we done here? We first enabled this DNS system, and then we assigned IP name server, that is we wanted to choose the IP address we want to select as the DNS, and we want to assign the name for. After that, we have to choose the name. The name which I have chosen here is utopian, and for that I have wrote the command IP domain name utopian. Okay, the name is chosen, everything is done. What we'll do is we'll save the configuration. For that, we have to write the command do wr. So the configuration is built, and now we'll see if this connection is built or not, if the name is assigned or not. We'll just we'll just uh, go back to the privilege mode and write ping. We'll use ping again and ping utopian. What we did is we will try to ping if and check if the connection is built or not, and now press enter. As you can see, the type and the sending is possible, the data is being sent, the packets are sent, and the success rate is 100%. That is, what we have done is that we have assigned a name to the IP address, and we can ping that too. That is, the connection is built, we have given a name to the address. So in this video tutorial, we learned that, two ways of doing it. One is a simple static way of assigning mapping host names to IP addressing, and second, we understood and learned how we can configure DNS, that is domain name system, so that we can resolve host names to the IP addresses. Stay in touch. Thank you for being a part of this.